There's no chance they were 50 foot. There's no way. I was like, dude, they were 50. I promise you. And I texted you. I said, Matt Cat is the voice of reason.
Nothing like stars from a paradise. Don't care cause there's magic in the air tonight. Pretty girl in my ear, she the rarest type. Heaven on earth is right here tonight. I'm in the dream state. I'm in the dream state.
Extra scoop, Folgers for the soldiers. Half a bang. There is no other way. I almost shaved the facial hair. I said, listen, I got to leave a little bit because it represents wisdom. And the man who sits next to me is full of it. And I'm very excited to get into this story. Here's some of the finer details, as I call them. And we met a couple years ago and just had an absolutely legendary time. Been trying to get him on the pod here, and it lined up this week. We got the legend, Matt Cat. How we doing, brother?
Good, very good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm fired up to have this episode going. I mean, the stories of that which you have, I'm really excited to hear, and I'm excited to get into them because we met, I guess now it was 2 years ago around. It was December of 2020 going into 2021 in Hawaii. And, I mean, from the moment I met you, it was cool because, you know, we're both from Jersey here in the same area, and the first time we met was in Hawaii. So there's a lot I don't know. I just kind of know the surface level and some of the stories, and we've stayed in contact since. But I guess, you know, just to start out, give a little bit of background on yourself and fill us in on a little bit of the story.
Sure. Well, first off, there's actually a lot of people from New Jersey that I've met for the first time in Hawaii, strangely enough. Something about that place that, something about New Jersey, too. Can't go anywhere without meeting someone from Jersey.
Greatest state in the union.
Yeah. But yeah, my story. So I'm definitely was born in New Jersey, or so my parents had told me. Born in Neptune, Jersey Shore Hospital, supposedly in a snowstorm in April. That's all I know. I don't remember it. But grew up in Brielle, which, back in the 80s, cool time to be alive. A lot of dark wood wall paneling and shag carpet and weird hairdos. And I got to, my sister, I was the mistake in the family. My brother and sister were, they were like in high school and college when I was born, and I got to, witness all that 80s stuff through them. But yeah, what about me? We're, coming from Jersey, it's a cool place to come from because you don't realize how cool it is until you leave, and like, you're always like, oh, I hate where I'm from, or like, not everyone says that, but, you're always like, oh, I'm from Jersey. Like, oh, I would love to be in Hawaii. I'd love to be in California. Like, the grass is always green on the other side. And then you go to those places and you're like, oh man, I miss home. I miss being at home in Jersey in the summer. I miss the energy. I miss my friends, miss my family, like all that stuff. Like, Jersey has this like crazy energy, being the most densely populated state. Like, there's a little bit of everything, it's not like the most pretty state. But it's like, you never get bored, maybe it's because you're so close to New York City. Maybe it's because of, the balance between that and the Jersey and the ocean, and, there's a little bit of everything. Yeah.
I mean, this area in particular too, in Jersey, when you grow up around here, it's a special place, and it's the whole show, the Jersey Shore, kind of gave it, our area somewhat of a bad rep. But if you look at like our area, like Point up to like Belmar and Long Branch and all that, like, it's such an amazing and beautiful area. And then just the energy that's in New Jersey, like you said, like the wit, the people, it's when you leave it, you're like, I need to get back to it. And yeah. I've experienced that a lot. And even when I go places for a certain amount of time, I'm always itching to get back to the greatest state in the union. That is New Jersey. And get back to my people and my friends that I grew up with, and just the energy that surrounds everyone around here. Now, you're very into videography, photography, and stuff like that. You came up in I guess the surfing culture here, which is huge in this area. Where did that start for you? Were you always into that? Like, and you grew up surfing and everything?
Yeah. So I grew up going to the beach with my mom, Seagirt Beach early in the morning as a young kid. And she bought me one of those like cheap foam bodyboards not from a surf shop, but like from a grocery store, the ones that look like an old ironing board with a fabric on top. And I just remember riding waves straight in and having the time of my life. And a lot of my friends grew up kind of getting into bodyboarding, and so I had a kind of big push in bodyboarding, coming up involved in the ocean doing that. And just having an amazing, really good time with my friends, just going out and womping around, and didn't even really know what I was doing, but it was just fun as hell to be in the ocean and seeing your friend get sucked backward over the falls when you look back, and occasionally getting barreled and benny bopping, I used to call it, where you go straight and just try to hit the bennies on the way in. But yeah, and then around high school, I had a couple friends that stand-up surfed, and I just was like, I was like, enamored by it. I was like, how can I do this? So my next door neighbor was a big surfer, and I asked him to borrow his board, and I just took the board down to Secret Beach after school every day, and like I just taught myself how to surf. There was no surf schools. I just wanted to learn so bad that I just went somewhere where no one see me and threw myself over the falls like 100 times, and then I got it, and I finally figured it out. Around high school, just before I graduated high school, a good friend of mine, Jason Bitzer, he was on the bodyboard world tour. He was given a what do you call it? The wild card.
Okay.
And so he had approached me to do a website for him, and then I was getting into videography and photography around that time, and we started making a bodyboard video. I was in school at the time. I couldn't travel much, but he started, I got down to Mexico, I got to Hawaii, and like, I just like, as soon as I saw the big waves, I just was like, I have to keep shooting this stuff. I have to, this is insane what I'm witnessing right now, these massive waves and the power and the energy of them. And, just also like the way water photographs and just, being around it. And it was such a cool perspective that I wanted to capture for myself, let alone share with other people. Like, that was the driving factor, is like, wow, these places are so special. I've never seen anything like this. I bet so many people would love to see this or hear about it. And I think that's with anything, photography related, like you shoot what you love and things that you want to share with, that you think people would enjoy seeing your perspective,
Yeah. I mean, when we were in Hawaii, I felt that what you just described is exactly what I was feeling. Like, I was seeing, and again, we grew up in the surf culture here, but when I went out there and actually saw those waves and, the surfers on them for the first time being out there on the North Shore, like during winter when it was firing, I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. And it's something that you want to capture. Like you said, like you see it and you're like it, even so, the way you're shooting it captures that energy, and from the beach, like from the shoreline, you can't even describe it. Like, even if I was showing somebody my view from the shoreline, it's like you can't captivate the full energy. But the way you do it, when you get out there and you're actually in the ocean, like with these surfers in those waves, it's crazy. And I just remember when we were out there, I mean, the swell came in at Pipe when we were out there, and I was just by the shoreline, whatever, and you are walking up to where near like the rocks where people would swim out, and you're like, you coming out? And it's a swell, and these waves are 25 to 30, sometimes 40 feet. And I'm like, dude, you're crazy. And you just out there with the camera, the flippers gone. And you were just swimming out to the swell and catching, and all the surfers were in town, I think, for that during the swell. It was up at Pipe, and it's just a legendary spot. And so you start going to Hawaii, you mentioned. Was this right after high school when you were bouncing back and forth? Because now it's something that you do fairly often, right?
Yeah. So I'd say, when I started going to college, I did a couple trips to California at the end of high school. And then when I got into college, I had a little bit more time after the last semester was over. So I went to Mexico first and then Hawaii. And then when I went to Hawaii, I fell in love. And I went back almost every winter since then.
Yeah, it's hard not to fall in love when you get out there. It's unbelievable. And so when does it turn into you start shooting for, because you shoot for some of these professional surfers, and your photography and everything is featured in some of these magazines. When does it turn into that, going from kind of like a hobby and what you've been doing for a long time and something you love into something where you're actually making money and doing it, for real?
Yeah, and I think there's a parallel for almost any job that someone loves to do. That's how we find our passions. But in surf photography, it all starts with that interest, that spark, that that first time feeling that you're doing something, that drive to share your perspective with someone else. That's the driving factor, and you get to a point where you're doing something for fun and you love it and you do it anyway, whether you're getting paid or not. And then someone approaches you and says, "Hey, I'll give you $20 for that," or "Hey, you should send that somewhere." And like these little kind of like seeds come in, and you start sending things out or selling things, and then it kind of grows, like, kind of like planting a seed and letting it grow and nurturing it. And, you just keep the momentum going and see where it leads. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And you explained this to me, when we were out in Hawaii, kind of how it works. Like you'll go freelance photography out in the water, shoot these surfers, and then, those photographs, they'll take a look. And if it's something that they want to use, that's when they reach out to you, or are you sending them the pictures that you have? Because now it's at a point, I think, where you have, a lot of these professional surfers that are out there that you're shooting. But at one point, it was like you said, you're just kind of shooting, doing it because you love it. And then someone sees it and they're like, wow, this looks cool. Can I pay you to do this? When does it get to the point where, or can you explain how it works now when you go out to shoot in Hawaii or here in Manasquan when somebody wants to use your photo?
Yeah. So if there's a good swell, it's just like surfing. The waves are up. You go down. You pick a spot. Maybe you have an idea in your mind that you want to capture. So you premeditate that with a friend and you go try to capture it. That's one way to do it. The other way is to just like go wherever one's surfing at the best spot. Which around here, certain surfers tend to know where the waves are going to be the best depending on the swell direction and the tide and the offshore angle and. So we'll gravitate to those areas. You'll see a lot of talented surfers out, and you just kind of go and you see what you can get. And let's say, you happen to pass me in the barrel and I happen to come out really good on the camera. I would then probably tell you and be like, hey, I got a good shot of you. I'd send it to you. And you'd be like, oh, that's so sick. I don't have any money, but, could you just float that to me? I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
But then, and then occasionally you'll pass by a surfer or get a good angle of one that, is represented by a larger brand or even someone that really likes the photo. And they're happy to pay you for it. And there's like different markets for that, and there's a balance to, setting prices and, knowing what to sell and what to give away and, for marketing. And, if it's a big brand like, Nike, then yeah, charge them full price if they're going to put it on their website. But, if it's your buddy, then, hey, buy me a beer.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And do people also, like if they know a swell's coming in, will they reach out to you and be like, hey, waves are coming in, can you come and shoot?
Absolutely. So after you've been doing it for a couple of years, there's a general shared interest and people kind of know who's going to be around and who would possibly be interested to, working together. And that's always changing over the years, depending on who's in town and who's, doing what. And so that's the coolest thing is like it's been about over 20 years now I've been doing it. It's an evolution of shooting different groups of people, different individuals, different places, different types of surfing, different crowds. And I think that's the coolest part is looking back and seeing the evolution of how not only, New Jersey surfing has changed, but also, Hawaii and places I've traveled to. And it's nice to go back to the same place like Hawaii and nice to be here and shooting the big swells here and working with my friends, but it's also fun to chase that first time feeling, like going someplace for the first time and going off the charts and finding an adventure.
Oh, there's plenty of adventures out in Hawaii, I'll tell you that. And then just in the nature of what you're doing, I'm sure wherever you go, there's plenty of adventures. Like it's just so cool to see everything that surrounds that culture and the areas you're going to. And you mentioned you've been doing it for 20 years now. Have you seen any, changes that, come to mind over the course of, that time that you've been doing it? Or has it kind of been similar throughout? Like I know it's cool because I see that a lot of the kids that I know, and they're closer to my age and a little bit younger. And then you also know guys that are older that came up in your generation. So, I mean, is there any differences or anything you've seen change over the time that you've been doing it?
Yeah. There's been a lot of change. A lot of my generation will see it negatively, as most old timers do. But it's just fun to look back on that. When we technologically speaking in the camera realm, when I started doing it, everything was film and it was expensive and I didn't have the money to develop shots. So like I go out, I might shoot maybe go through a full roll in a day because I got to go home and spend money on developing that roll and I got to wait for it. And then if something comes back, then I got to mail it out to a magazine and maybe get feedback on it, Whereas, right around 2000, when I was in college, the digital camera kind of started to catch up to film. I'd say right around 2001, 2002. But they didn't really become popular until 2006, 2007. And that's when that feedback loop closed for the photographer and you could learn photography overnight. And there was like more water housings to get, in the water. And there was just much more resources to allow anyone to get into that game, which is a good thing. Because it drives innovation, drives creativity, the more players at the table. So it's, it's kind of like how you look at it, but yeah, that's one huge change I saw in photography was the access to it. Is it just brought a lot more people to the table. And I'd say surfing, there's not necessarily better technology in surfboards, there is, but I'd say the thing that changed in surfing is the social media aspect kind of allowed the word about it to grow, and it kind of caught more people's ears, especially during the pandemic. Everyone's sitting at home. They've known about surfing. They've always wanted to try surfing, but now they have the time. And that's when, all of a sudden you see everyone with a surfboard, and, now everyone lives at the shore or at Hawaii or wherever, and they're all surfing and taking up their hobbies, and it's cool. It sucks that the lineups are crowded. It sucks that there's a lot more photographers, but it's also driving creativity, and you're driving, you're raising the bar, and what you're seeing surfers do as well.
Yeah, I mean, during that, it's funny you mentioned that, because during that time frame of the pandemic, that summer and that spring when it was nice out, people wanted to get outside and do stuff, so the beach was just packed. And I didn't even think about it from that perspective. I'm sure there was a ton of people that wanted to try surfing or something like that for the first time. So they're probably out there with all these OGs. And, I actually, I think it's a little more accepting where we are in terms of, the veterans versus the rookies. I don't know. What have you seen in terms of that? Because, there's a lot of people that are starting out in the Groms, as we call them, but some of them shred. And, the veterans, you hear the stories of people getting into arguments out there in the water. What have you seen anything crazy over the years between somebody who's been out there for a while and somebody who's new? Or is it something where they have to actually do something that is deemed as disrespectful in the water?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen all types of things. I think it was a lot easier for people to get feisty before cell phones. There was less liability because you could go, call someone to the beach and fight them, and, wouldn't be recorded. And that was most prevalent in Hawaii at Pipeline. You'd always see fights break out there, and people would get slapped and punched and bring fights to the beach. And as soon as the cell phone came out and social media, all that mostly went away. A lot of it's just a lot of, staring and passive aggressiveness. And, occasionally a surfer will go over and slap you if you did something dangerous, but there's not the all out brawl at the beach anymore. And, for good reason. And I think it's a good thing. I think it has forced people to kind of control their emotions a little bit more. But yeah, you're in Jersey, you've seen it too. I don't see it as much in Jersey, but I do hear about it. And a lot of the groups, you'll hear people talking about, I hate that guy. He always drops in on me or whatever, but you don't see much action anymore. You just a lot of talk. So I don't know how to, fully describe how that is today, but it's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
More positive.
When we were out in Hawaii, someone was talking about how physical, fights. And, I grew up, all of my best friends are all surfers. I skateboarded. So they skated and they surfed. And so I would just sit on the beach and watch, and I never really saw anything like that. But out in Hawaii, I mean, the stakes are very high out there. Those waves are huge. They're powerful. Sometimes you're talking life or death depending on how it goes. Exactly. So it's for real. So I could see how somebody messing something up or just needing to kind of, be told and learn that lesson. Because it is, I mean, you go out there and you cut somebody off, or you hop on somebody's wave and it causes them to wipe out. It's no joke. Right. Those waves are huge. And I remember I was telling everybody, I always jack it up a little bit, you got to, when it was 25 to 30, I was saying 50-foot waves out there and everybody's laughing. I remember I texted you actually because I was actually angry. I was 50-foot waves and Will was like, there's no chance they were 50 foot. There's no way. I was like, dude, they were 50. I promise you. And I texted you. I said, Matt Cat is the voice of reason. And so I'm texting him and you said, well, the ones we watched at Pipe, I don't know if any of them ever reached, but there was a day earlier, the week before where they were reaching that, and it was breaking in. I do remember because, of course, we got Alejandro and all them. Yep. Now, when did you and Terrence meet? Was it through surfing, up at the beach?
Yeah, I met Terrence through surfing in Manasquan. I got pictures of him as a Grom. Yeah, more of a Grom than he already is.
And he went out to Hawaii for college. Were you out there during those years as well? Because were you going out there every year consistently for a while during the winter?
Yeah, my first year was 2004. I took a winter off because I took a full-time job. I used to work for IBM, which is another side story. But and then I went back every year. Then I took 2019 winter off. And and then I was out there 2020 for a shoot. And then the pandemic hit. So yeah, I only missed a couple winters since 2004.
I'll tell you what, it was nice to get out there during that pandemic time, and I can see how you would want to keep going back in the winter. Of course, it gets cold here, but the waves generally are better here in the winter.
Yes, you'll get much more powerful world-class waves in the winter generally, because you get the low-pressure systems kind of come up more, closer in a better direction and more ferocious, stronger low-pressure systems.
Yeah, because sitting out there in during the summer, I'm just catching a tan, solidifying on the beach, and then wintertime comes around, I'm never out there, but all of my friends, I'm trying to go skate, and they're like, we're going to surf. Yep. I'm like, dude, it's 10 degrees out, but wetsuits on, like you can't, surfing is something that when you have a passion for it, when you love it, it's like you're not missing those waves. Like you're out there, especially in New Jersey in the wintertime when they're good. And that was cool to see the discrepancy also in or the difference, I should say, between the summer and the winter in Hawaii. Like in town during the winter, there's nothing, but on the North Shore, it's firing. But then it reverses in the summer, and in town, the waves are firing, and there's nothing on the North Shore. So it was cool because I went 2 different times. And do you ever go out to Hawaii in the summer?
I have been there in the summer, yeah.
So like to go the first time I ever went and see the North Shore, full force, everybody out there watching all the pro surfers in these massive waves. I mean, I'm talking 2 at a time. It was the first time I ever seen that. 2 guys on a wave, just one going one way, one going the other way. It was insane to me. And then go back the next year, and I lived there in the summer with Terrence, and then we go up to the North Shore, and it's just flat. And I was like, it was crazy to me to see that, So, but now you mentioned you've been to California and some other spots. Now, Corey was telling me this crazy story of when you got, left for dead out at Mavericks. So I need to hear this story. I mean, what happened with this?
Yeah. So, I'm kind of known for just not thinking when I go out and shoot photos. So, especially when I see a great opportunity, but I can't get out there, I'll find a way.
Yep.
So I was in San Francisco for my buddy's wedding, and it was in November, and a huge, amazing coastal, top to bottom, Northern Cal to Baja swell popped up. And I was like, all right, I'm getting around with the car. I'm chasing this thing. So, I started in San Francisco. A buddy of mine was down at Mavericks, stayed there for the night, woke up in the morning. Amazing. I'm sorry. Let me trace back. I got there that night, and there was the initial pulse of the swell. And my buddy was on a ski with this guy from Alaska. And he's like, hey, I was like, hey, can you guys get me out there? Like, I need to get out there and get some photos. And he's like, all right, well, I can get you out. And, but I don't know if I can get you back in. And I was like, all right, whatever, I'll figure it out. And so he tows me out, drops me off. I'm swimming at Mavericks. I'm not on a ski or anything. I'm just in the channel. There's like a couple other guys out there on skis, but probably about 30, 40 guys surfing, a couple locals, couple kind of bigger names. And it's just a beautiful sunset, not like massive, crazy Mavericks. It's like kind of clean swell. It's manageable, but, big, beautiful. And get some shots. Sunset's amazing. I'm sticking around. I'm like, oh, I'm sure that guy will come, come say what's up. Just check on me. That's on his way in. And it's getting nicer. I'm shooting the sunset, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's time to go. And start seeing all the guys on their board start paddling in or catching waves, and the guy who dropped me off just never came by, and I'm like, all right. So I start mentally preparing myself for what I have to do, swimming in. It's probably about 3/4 of a mile swim. And it would have been, because I sat through the sunset, it was just like the reddish hue on the sky at this point. And it would have been a 3/4 mile swim with my camera in the dark.
Holy God.
Sharky waters. And so I'm like, I'm just mentally preparing myself for this. And I start going, and then one more ski comes by, but it's got 3 guys on it. There's 2 guys on the ski and 1 guy already on the sled. And it's Josh Kerr, some Grom, and someone else. I think it was I forget the third person, but they recognized me, and they're like, hey, are you right? I was like, yeah, that guy who brought me down here, I think he already went in. And they're like, oh man, they're like, all right, just hold on to something. And they dragged me in, and I got really lucky. It was, it would have been a really scary night.
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost, just like you said, the sharky waters. Like you're out there, and is California more? I feel like I hear a lot of people talk about, you know, the fact that there's a lot more sharks around there where the surfers are. Is that true or no?
There's a lot of sharks in California. I generally don't worry about sharks too much. However, when it's getting dark, you know, different things creep into your mind. So yeah, dark sharks are not fun.
Especially when you're 3/4 of a mile out in the water. I mean, that's a long swim back. I mean, and it's just you and your camera. You know, like you have the camera that you have to carry with you to get in. And have you? So they end up bringing you in, all good. Like you're safe to go. You're good to go, and you get in. Did you talk to the guy who left you out there, or?
I never talked to him again.
Okay.
I don't think I want to talk to him.
I mean, that's an insane story. I mean, you're out at Mavericks and again, coming from somebody who's not really, you know, that into it. Like I don't really know everything, but you know, Mavericks is like a spot where, you know, they have that movie Chasing Mavericks or whatever, and it's a well-known spot. So just like when Corey was explaining it and you were just left out, I was like, that's insane, you know? Yeah. And have you seen, like when you're out there shooting like during the day, because even in Hawaii, there's some sharks around, like not that many, I don't think, but have you ever seen something while you're out there?
I've never seen any sharks while I've been surfing. But I've been with friends who claim they've seen a shark, and they're like, we got to go. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, let's get the hell out of the water. I remember we were trying to do the shark diving in Hawaii. I got convinced to do it, and I was like, I don't know about this. But then I think it ended up where there weren't that many, and they went, you know, the charter went out, and it was they didn't see any, so we didn't have to go, and it got canceled. I said, everything happens for a reason. I said, I'm not rescheduling. I said, if we were supposed to go, you know, I went back and forth in my mind a ton on doing it, and then I finally agreed to, and then it gets canceled. I said, that's a sign. I'm good to go. So
yeah. Well, sharks are a very misunderstood creature, so I hope you do get a chance to go at some point.
Yeah, I think, you know, the girl who initially told me to do it, the way she described it, like you would think it changed her life, which maybe it did, but she was like, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, like just being in the midst of all of them. And I think they're not like great white sharks or whatever, but I have seen some people shoot some crazy stuff out in Hawaii. Like some of the pictures and videos I've seen, there's some big sharks. There's some, I mean, obviously the sea turtles are out there. Those are my favorite. You know, I'm one with the turtles. But what would you say is your favorite? Do you have a favorite part of Hawaii?
Every island has a personality and a vibe to it. I think I would say the Big Island for me. It's got 13 climates. Not many people know that, I guess, but you could be in the snow, you could be in the tropics, you can be in the rainforest, you can be in the dry beach, you can be, you know, and everywhere in between, and you can have a cold house on a mountain, or you could be, you know, warm on one side of the island or wet on the other side, and you can be next to a volcano. It's really cool. It's wild, and you know, that's the island that's still growing and it's active and it's, you know, feels a little bit more alive, and it's just it felt cool to me. It felt like it was like there was still a frontier there. And obviously there's islands I've never been to in Hawaii that are, you know, off the charts and not inaccessible to most people. But yeah, the Big Island had that feeling for me.
When was the first time you went to the Big Island? Or how many times have you been there?
So there's actually been a huge Jersey contingency of individuals that have lived there. Really? Bought houses and lived in Kukuihaile, which is a small town up above Waipio Valley on the east side. Beautiful area, but I would go and visit almost every winter for, you know, two a couple weeks, and it was unreal. It's just a very quiet, awesome experience. And I bring my camera and walk around, and you're kind of shooting down on the ocean from up on the cliffs, and the clouds would reflect off the ocean. I just remember that, and you're looking down on like a white ocean, like a scattered blue and white. It was really cool. Yeah,
the Big Island is beautiful. It's unreal. And Terrence convinced us to go, and I can't wait to dive into that story one day. But when we were out there this summer, while Will was there, you know, who was out there for the first trip as well, and we all became good friends, Terrence convinced us to go to the Big Island. And man, I mean, we were staying in, you know, what's the main town? Is it Kona? Or no? What's the main
Kona
town?
And Hilo.
Yeah. So we were in Kona, and we, you know, everywhere we go, I mean, we were going to the edge of the island, so it was like 2.5 hours, like 3 hours, like, and we would just, you know, we were staying at a hostel, which ended up being super nice because I wasn't so open to doing the hostel at first. I was like, you know, I need my room, I need my bathroom, you know, but the place we stayed was amazing and met some really cool people there. And we formed a squad with the people that were staying while we were staying. And Terrence had already known them because he went out there previously. And I was wondering why he was so, insistent on going to the Big Island. And then we get there, and we were originally supposed to stay for like 3 days. And I think Terrence honestly just wanted a break from, being in town and all that action that was going on there. So we stayed at the hostel, which I wouldn't even call it, it was more like a hotel. They were great. And we start driving to the different spots that we were talking about. Like you go to one side, the island, and it's cold. It's like 30 degrees. You're up looking at the stars. And then, you go the other way and you're looking at Pele and feeling the spirit, and you're at the volcano and it's amazing. But to encompass, like, for Will, when he was out there, maybe you had this as well, when he was like trying to capture the shots, he was in awe of what we were seeing because it's very open. And it's something that you can't really describe unless you get the full description of it when someone tells you, unless you've been there and experienced it. So it's interesting that you said the Big Island, because I also, felt that way when we went out there. I was like, this place is crazy. And we went and we ended up staying, I think, an extra 2 or 3 days. We didn't want to leave. There was so much to see. And after the first 2 nights, we realized we're like, let's just stay another couple nights. Luckily, they had some rooms available and some beds available. And we stayed and we went. And I mean, the whole volcano, the Pele experience, just sitting out there with Terrence and looking at, the wave pools of the lava and everything. It was crazy. And I would encourage people, even you just saying that, like, just getting out there and seeing that place, it's insane. And I think that's the cool part about Hawaii is that you can really get to the different islands. It's very accessible. It's like a 35-minute flight, like in between. And it's very quick in the airport, you go in and out. By the time you reach the top, flight level, you're already going down, like you're already descending. So, but I really enjoyed the Big Island as well. Now, have you been to all the other islands or no?
I've been to Kauai, first time with my parents when I was 7, Maui with my parents when I was 7, Oahu, and Big Island. Yeah, I've never been to Lanai or Molokai yet.
Yeah, I'm looking to get out to, Terrence wanted us to go to Maui as well and check out that place, but Will wasn't staying as long as I was, so we never got out there. But I do want to get to the other islands as well and check them out. And it's always cool to have, I think Terrence is going to stay out there. And it's cool. You mentioned there's a lot of people from New Jersey living out in the Big Island. Are there some people, on Oahu right now that we know?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's hard to go anywhere and not run into people from Jersey, but yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah, there is a couple of people from on Oahu, Alejandro and Rena and their whole family. It's moving around and changing a lot, but I'd say every winter there's always a Jersey group that's out there cruising through, trying to live there, living there, about to move back,
I just remember when we were out on the North Shore that first trip, like Cole was out there, who I just did the podcast with the other day, and we had a whole squad. Every single person almost was from New Jersey. And there was like 25 of us, and it was interesting to see. And you're right. I think going anywhere in the world, you're going to run into somebody from New Jersey. It's kind of crazy, especially when you're from New Jersey. The energy just seems to find each other. But bringing it back to like now here in Manasquan and everything like that, what do you have going on currently here? Are you shooting the winter? Are you out there? Because I know, do you know Alex Branch?
Yep.
He lived in California. He's
great longboarder.
Yes, great longboarder. But what I've noticed recently is that he just moved back from California. We played baseball together growing up. We went to college together, played baseball, very good friends. And I noticed when he came back now, he's been really getting after it with shooting the surfers. I've seen him out there. I've seen him shooting Cole. I've seen him shooting our buddy Ryan Schobel, our good friend Shane Meserole. Is there anything going on right now, or like what do you have going on currently here in New Jersey?
Yeah, so I mean on the surf front, it's nice to. I'm usually not around here in the winter, so it's kind of a cool change, and I'm usually like jealous when I'm in Hawaii looking back on the winter storms. So we have had a couple days of good swells, and I've been trying my best to either get down and surf or shoot them. But this year, I had a interesting incident happen with I bought a house in 2022, and I rented it and got scammed. Yep, and it's been taking up a lot of my time, so I've had to put a lot of my surf photography and surfing time on the sidebar for for the time being. But.
So Corey was filling me in on this as well when I first said I wanted to have you on the podcast, and he was, letting me know that there was something going on with the tenants that you had in this house that you got. So what actually, happened? I guess you go into detail as far as you can based on what's going on, but yeah. What was the situation with that?
So, most people are excited when they buy a house. So I found a house, I'm still, single guy, figured I could live in an apartment. So I found a house, a back garage apartment. So I'm like, hey, I'll live in the back and I'll rent the front out, and that'll help me, pay the mortgage / I can still travel / I can fix up the place. And so we bought it. I bought it at the end of March, right after I got back from Hawaii, and was working on it in April. And then we put it on Facebook Marketplace, and there must have been 40 people that came out to look at it. And this one family in particular had 2 kids. They were living in town. Their daughter worked at the local surf shop. They had a son that was, also in school in the area. And I thought they were great, great family. They told me they loved fixing up their previous landlord's house. The wife told me she loved gardening. I was like, oh man, these people are great. If I'm not around the house, they know how to fix things. And so kind of handshake deal them in. Not I'm focused on I just bought this house. Let's fix it up. I'm not really focused on all the paperwork of getting a tenant.
Sure.
I feel like I met someone really great. And so get into it, and a month goes by, and I'm traveling, I'm working, doing some gigs around the country, and I'm like, hey, I'm contacting this time, I'm like, hey, can you pay some rent? He was late on rent, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought I wired it, I don't know what's wrong. Let me call the bank. And a couple of days go by, and I'm like, hey, what's going on with that wire transfer? And he keeps coming up with these crazy excuses, oh, it's being wired, but I think the bank had to reverse it out. And so finally, I'm starting to get a little suspicious of what's going on. And just by chance, I find their previous landlord based on a tip the guy gave me where he used to live. And sure enough, that previous landlord told me that they were professional grifters.
Oh man.
And they owed him a bunch of money, and they not only do they not pay rent, they know all the housing codes and all the ways that they can sue you and hold you liable for not having a handrail or not having the heat on or something. And so once I knew that they were not only just trying to live for free, they were premeditating some way to take everything I'm worth, I went into a tailspin of oh my God, I just bought this house. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the codes. I don't know what to do. I don't, so I had to hire a lawyer. I had to, start doing all the research on all the housing codes. And then when we sent the legal notice for them not paying rent, then they came back with all these things that were wrong with the house. And then I had to go find a way to install a handrail, and I didn't know how to do that. So then I had to find a handyman, and it was one thing led to another, and it opened up this huge can of worms. And I ended up moving out of my own house in the back apartment, moved back in with family. Couldn't really travel because now I'm paying the mortgage for a family that's not paying any rent. I'm living at home with my sister and my mom, and it was a crazy 7-month long experience that just ended.
So were they right off the bat? They were not paying rent, or did they pay a month or two?
Well, they had to pay to get in. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let them in.
Yeah. So first month was already paid.
So there's a little nuance to the story. There was an upstairs bedroom that we started kind of renovating, tearing out the carpet. And we're like, hey, this is going to take a couple weeks to get done. Why don't you pay half rent until it gets done? So that was part of their whole game is hey, once we're in, we're not going to let you have access to the house. And that's going to keep our rent cut in half the entire time that we're not even going to pay anyway. But once we get into court, then I could only hold them to that half rent in the court process. But some of the reasons they wouldn't let us in the house, the husband said he worked with the CIA and he had top secret clearance. That was a big thing. And no one could be in the house, no electricians, no one, because he had top secret phone calls. And if the person on the other end of the line heard that was someone else was in the house, the call would get dropped immediately. So I sent an electrician over there, and that's what the wife told him. She said, you got to be very quiet because if you make any noise. So he's like, I can't do my job. I got to make noise. So it was just crazy. And if it wasn't that, like their son was like a germaphobe and couldn't be around germs, and it just went on, and they kept it going as long as they could until I got to the point where I could trigger an eviction, which was triggered by them not paying rent for 2 months straight. Because they paid a little bit over the summer to keep like the clock going, because you can reset the clock every time you pay rent. It's like the tenant rights. So I learned a lot. I learned all about the games and the legal games you could play. And if I ever want to live rent free, I can now do that.
It's pretty crazy that they'll just fabricate this story first of all, but the fact that think about you said 40 people came to see the house, and out of all of them, that's who you end up with.
Yeah,
it's
like losing the lottery.
It's what are the chances that that's going to happen? And I guess we should define grifters for anybody who doesn't really know what that is.
Right. So everyone's seen Breaking Bad, probably. Great show. So there's an offshoot. The lawyer in Breaking Bad is Saul, and there's another show that's an offshoot of Breaking Bad called Better Call Saul, and the whole story is about him being a grifter as he's growing up and how he makes a living being a grifter. A grifter is basically a scam artist. It's someone who builds your trust, pretends they're your friend so that you don't pay attention to the things that they're doing in the background. And that could be like a card game. It could be, stealing your watch, your wallet. It could be, like a pickpocket. But in this sense, it was someone that I trusted. I was like, this is a nice family. What could they possibly do? And sure enough, they knew all the laws and ways to manipulate it. And, they were trying, and this is still a theory of mine, but based on the evidence I have, I think my house was built before 1978, which may have certain chemicals in it in the walls that you could be exposed to as a tenant if you were to sand, do anything to the house. So a contractor was in there. They kept asking me to expand their master bedroom closet. I was like, what is going on? Why are they hammering me on this? So finally, they found their own contractor. He shows up. They pretended they were the homeowners. And at the last second, I caught it. But he had started breaking the closet to expand it. And then the tenant started sending me text messages like saying the contractor didn't protect their things from dust. I was like, why does he keep hammering this dust thing?
This is unreal.
And then I realized he was trying to go after me for the lead paint asbestos exposure. So if he ever gets cancer, he can come back and sue me. And so it's like all these they were building this. They were premeditating the liability and pushing me into this using my lack of knowledge in the subject matter.
That's unbelievable.
So once this is in my head, I'm going insane. I'm like, what else don't I know about? What laws don't I know? And I'm meeting with 20 different lawyers. I'm going to the town. I'm talking to the code inspector. And it was just 7 months of doing that and waking up every day and playing mind games through email. And I'm just glad it's over.
Yeah, here you are, happy that you got the house, you closed on it, ready to go. You got some tenants, and then this whole thing just erupts. I mean, people when they're these professional grifters, I mean they're insane. Like they know what they're doing. And so while you're explaining all this and saying what happened, I know it's hard for some people to believe, but I worked in fraud operations for PayPal before I opened the bar with my family.
Wow.
And so
it was
and it was very low level, but it was more financial related because we were doing, loans and advances. And the biggest thing was these people who do what's called credit abuse, and they'll build their credit for years. And they have these businesses where you see all the transactions and everything going on in the bank statements, and it's actually a legit business. And the transactions are real. Everything's real about it because, of course, you'll get fake bank statements where it's just fake transactions, right, which are pretty easy to find now with bank references. You could call and find out if it's real or not, certain transactions. But they would have these real transactions, these real businesses that are making it look like they're doing all this revenue, everything, and then their credit is amazing, and they'll end up getting a loan or something, and then you'll have seen a credit history of 15, 20 years, wow, and then they'll get this money, however much they qualify for, and then you'll never see them again.
Oh, wow.
And you just write it off as a credit loss, from the business standpoint, unless you can confirm fraud. But they'll basically use that money to buy a bunch of things and then resell them. They'll just take the money and run. They won't pay it back. And that was very interesting to me because, again, it goes back to where you were saying how they knew all these laws. They knew all these little things, the little nuances. you're looking at a credit history of like 15, 20 years. You're like, this guy's got, 750, 780 credit. They're going to pay this back, no problem. They've always done it. And then you give them the money, and then the next week the payment doesn't come through, and you never hear from them again.
Right.
And it's like, it was interesting to see all that, and then learn about like synthetic identities and all that. But it really is out there. And it's more common than you think. I don't know how common with the whole real estate, but people know these things. And I guess, it was kind of, by chance you were able to find their old landlord. And then that's when it was cool. How early on did you find their landlord? Like after you?
About a month and a half into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So luckily that was fairly early, because it could have gone on a lot longer, I guess.
Yep.
But I want to bring it back to the videography and photography now, because that's, something that you do all the time. And in terms of social media, I guess, you were taking pictures and doing all this stuff before social media was even big. Mm-hmm. And then, the rise of social media happens. Nowadays, we got TikTok, we got all this crazy stuff. What is your opinion on social media? How have you seen the benefits, I guess, and maybe some of the disadvantages of it from a videography and photography standpoint, seeing it from the beginning?
Yeah, so we can go down a rabbit hole with social media, but yeah, I think it's in the big picture, it's a positive thing. It brings a lot more voices to the table as far as accessibility. So it's going to drive creativity, it's going to drive innovation, and it's going to drive discussion, which is good. On the negative side, everything feels a lot more crowded. You get a lot of fake, not genuine, personalities, and weeding through that can drive you insane, knowing what's real, what's not real, who's being fake, who's being authentic. And I think that's, kind of what, we see a lot of documentaries about social media leading to like this mind disease. And I think that's what drives that, is like the human mind can only handle so much input. So like me personally, I've taken a big step back from social media. It's a very powerful tool for your business and for advertising yourself and showing what you do for a living and connecting with people. But if you use it the wrong way, just like a gun, it can be destructive and negative and just a bunch of fluff.
What was your reaction to it, I guess, when it first came on the scene? When it arose, because I'm thinking, Facebook was big when I was in high school. That kind of blew up then, and that was the biggest thing. But I guess you were doing all this stuff before it even came about. Like, what was your initial reaction to it when it first started?
Well, I think, that stems back to when the internet kind of first came out. Mm-hmm. And, when AOL came out, we were in chat rooms, and then we had AOL Instant Messenger. And then, I used to play this when I was in high school. I got big into this 3D game called Quake, where you could play multiplayer online. And like, it was the first time you could play in 3D with people over a dial-up modem. And I was addicted to it. And I loved the fact that you could connect to someone across the world in a millisecond. Like, it's so powerful. And we've seen that with from money to gaming and social media. Like, it's incredible what we can do with it. But seeing that first come on, seeing us go through that change, it's been cool. There's a lot of things I miss. I miss picking up a wall phone and calling my buddies and meeting in one place on a Friday night, and that was it. It was like you're in or you're out for the night. Like, if you didn't get on that phone call, if you didn't show up, you're done.
Yeah, and you didn't know what went down.
Yeah, now you can change your plans 20 times on a Friday night. And you're like, oh, I'm down at this bar. No, come here, come to my house, come to this. And you're like, so like, there's some nostalgia that I miss from pre-social media days and pre-cell phone days. But at the same time, it's really driving a lot of really cool innovation and stuff and storytelling and connecting. And so, yeah, just like any tool or it's how you use it. It's how you balance it.
Yeah, I was wondering if, like, at the beginning when it first started, I guess not even at the beginning, because like you said, the AOL and all that, but when Instagram first started popping off and that became huge, because you have an amazing page on there that has your work on there. Were you able to use it at the beginning to, help further some opportunities and give yourself some more,
And I'd say every time now that I post like maybe twice a year now, but when I do post now, I'll see people will start hitting me up. They'll be like, hey, it reminds them that I'm alive and I do that service, and and it's funny how it works. It's like, marketing does work. You have to tell people what you do, and you have to tell them that your product exists. Otherwise, how is anyone going to know about it? So, it's still a very effective tool, and I notice it just by not using it and then suddenly using it. It really helped me grow my presence in surf photography, sending shots of Surfline, and they post me, and people would find me through that. And it's incredibly powerful, and I highly recommend it especially to photographers, videographers.
Yeah, and especially you're going back and forth to all these different places, Hawaii, California, doing shoots all over, and being able to stay connected with the people you shot with. They might live in Hawaii. And then you come back to the East Coast, you're working on photography, developing things, and then you're able to connect with them and send them what they have, and they could post and show that it was you who took them, and you're out in New Jersey now, they're in Hawaii. I think that is the cool part of social media, and it has always been my favorite part of it, in anything you do, is that you get to stay connected with people you meet.
Right.
So there was a ton of people that we met in Hawaii that are still out there or somewhere else now that I've stayed connected with and been able to see what they're doing, as it's been 2 years since we were out there now. Yep. And, I still get to see what they're doing day to day. If they post every day, I could reach out to them, see how they're doing. So that part of it is very cool to me as well. And I really like that part of it, especially because, like you said, going back to the whole New Jersey thing at the beginning, all of or at least all of my close friends from New Jersey that I grew up with, I love staying in contact with them. And I feel like they know me the best. They know my energy, which even Cole was saying that he's like, your energy's a lot for people. When you first came on the scene, and I saw you at Retro, and he even said, he was like, I was a little scared. I'm not going to lie. But, people who know my energy best, like me putting a video out on social media allows them to see what I'm doing, and it also allows them to experience that energy even if I'm not there.
Right.
And that is something that I think is really cool. And then, again, with it also allows you to show your work and put it out there. And like I said, your page is amazing. And then, I met my good friend Jake Armando's cousin. Matt, he lives out in Hawaii right now. Mm-hmm. And his buddy is somebody who goes and dives with the sharks and takes all these crazy pics. And I've got to see all that because he shares his photos. And I think that's just the cool part of it, is being able to stay connected with everyone. And I think it's kind of changing, though. And, of course, there is the bad part of it, and it kind of makes you see what everybody else is doing and makes you think that you might be behind, based on what everybody else is accomplishing. But, I mean, what I've learned is that, like, every person I know that's super successful has been doing what they're doing for a long time.
Right.
And it's not just something that happened overnight. So even when I think it's tough for people who may be coming up in the game now, looking at all the social media that's going on. Like, what do you think of TikTok? Are you even on there?
I signed up for an account just to have access to it. My sister, for some reason, loves it, and she, especially during the pandemic, she would send us all these crazy conspiracy theories through there. And
there's a lot going around at that time.
So I clicked on a couple of them, and it it's cool because it's like little smaller bits of information that are. It's cool. It gets a little weird when you see people. You're out to dinner and you see like some teenagers dancing in the background and they got their phone on the ground and like, what's going on?
Yeah.
It's gotta be a TikTok.
The one thing I will say is on TikTok is I do like the fact that when you post something that a lot of people like, it just keeps going. And that's where the virality is generated. Like if a lot of people like it, it will keep pushing it to more people because it recognizes that people are resonating with it. And I think that's cool because you don't need a big following.
The algorithm.
Yeah, the algorithm. Like everybody talks about it, and it's cool because you could be somebody who's not that big on social media and maybe it's something you want to do, and then you put something out that resonates with people, and then it just goes, and you have kind of like a base idea of what you could be doing or content that works that people will like. And so that I think is really cool, as opposed to where it may take a little bit longer, building it over time.
Right.
But it's an interesting time, and I enjoy TikTok. I like watching it. But the thing with the Instagram part of it is like, you have the followers, and this is the big difference between TikTok and Instagram I see right now, is that the followers I have on Instagram are really like a lot of my close friends and people I've connected with over time. Mm-hmm. And then on TikTok, everybody follows me. I don't even know. They just saw a cool video. They thought it was funny, went viral in Hawaii, a viral video on Coco Head, the hike. And now I got all these followers that I don't even know. But, what's cool drawing the connection is I met you out in Hawaii, and I had already known, I guess your cousin is Frankie Cat, right? Yep. So he is heavily involved in baseball, something that he loves, and that's something that I played growing up, and I really love it. And so, he was coaching Manasquan High School, and I actually met him at a camp through Mike Condon. Condon School of Baseball does the camp every year. I've been doing it for, since I've been alive. I went to the camp when I was younger, when I was old enough, and then as soon as I was too old to do it, I became a counselor, and I've been doing it ever since. And I met him one summer, and we connected, and we've known each other just from, through mutual connections.
Okay.
And then I go out to Hawaii, I meet you, you're posted on my story and tagged, and then he hits me up and lets me know that you guys are related. And then he was just hitting me up ever since, whenever we posted something together out there, and I would send him some messages, some videos of us, just some hype videos.
Yeah,
and I think
world.
that's the coolest part. Is So do you ever go down and see him over at Leggett's?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I bump into him at the bank at Leggett's, all around town. But we kind of, back when we were like 3 or 4 years old, his mom used to drop him off to hang out with me during the day while she was a teacher, and we used to get into trouble together. And
legends, both. And it was just cool to see that connection and have that go. Yeah. But in terms of going out, actually, I just mentioned Leggett's, where he's been for a long time. Is there anywhere around here that you go, or when you were younger, was there spots that you were going out all the time here? Or?
Yeah, so I mean, that's another thing that's changed over time. Before I could even go out, there was a place in Brielle that was a club called, I think it was like Casablanca or something. And, I remember in the summer, like seeing all the bennies go there. But then there was like Lawrence Taylor, who had his bar in Brielle. And but as far, when I turned 21, or even before I was legal drinking age, there was a couple, shady bars in Asbury that we used to go to get a drink. And but everything changes so fast; it's unreal. Like I still love going to Asbury on, to find some extra energy and see people I don't know. But around here, Belmar's was a huge place when I was 21. From Bar A to Connolly Station and what was the 511 Park Street or.
Damn, Connolly Station. That's a fire shout out because they had some good times there.
And then one that I'll miss dearly is Union Landing. That was like the hometown.
Oh man,
you wanted to get away from the bennies, so you pull into the local spot and you just see your friends. That was like that's what we're now missing, is a place like that.
Yeah, Union Landing was, and I worked there too, which was cool.
Awesome.
But that the Schmidts are unbelievable people. I've been trying to get Pat on this podcast. We've been hitting him up, but I don't think he's too into it. So I'm going to still try, and I'm going to hit him up a few more times and try to convince him. But UL was a special place. Now it's interesting because the guy who took it over, Larry, the guy from next door who bought it and everything, finally, after all those years of haggling the Schmidts and giving them all those issues.
Paved paradise and put up a parking lot, basically.
Yeah, but you might not even know this. He hired my father to run the place.
Oh, wow.
So that first summer, a lot of the people that were coming, like locally, were because they knew my family and they knew him from the golf club. Okay. So like all the people I would say, want to see, I don't know if I should word it that way, like from around, would still pop in here and there. And then there was, of course,
you couldn't find them.
Couldn't find them, and that whole new crowd was in there, because they changed the whole operation of it. And then, after that first summer, my family, we were out of there. It was done. So, but just going back to UL and what they, made there, what they put together, I think it was such a good family type like feel over there. Like everybody who went there was welcomed as family. Yeah. And I'll never, like Matt Schmidt, who was running that place for a long time, him and Meatface, and then of course Pop. I mean, those guys are legends. But, Matt, I really took a lot of inspiration from in running, bars and restaurants, because I saw the way that he was when he ran that place. He was just always so nice. He was always offering help. He was trying to help all the employees, always asking us what we needed, if he could help out in any way. And, that combined with my family who's been in it for a long time, it really helped me out when I opened the spot in New Brunswick, Reds. And I just remember always taking, some of the things I learned from him and using them all the time, because he was such a good boss and such a good guy. That whole family, they're legends.
It actually made like a great neighborhood space. It didn't feel like you were just rushed in and rushed out for the numbers. It was like it had character. It was quaint. It had, it was by the river, it was just, it had that feeling that it's hard to find. You can't just like create that,
Yep. And a lot of the people who were always going there were always connected outside of there as well, like down at the beach. It was a whole, aura that they created. And I was thankful to be there. And I was actually wondering if UL was one of your, staple spots. I'm sure.
Probably my favorite spot that I'll miss. Yeah.
And they always had good bands playing there on the weekends. Like it was just, the vibe there was unbelievable. And then it was interesting for me because I went from working there to working the new place, when it became Waypoint. and it was just totally different.
Yeah,
it was just totally different. And
totally
then,
different crowd.
after that first summer, we were out of there, and they've been going ever since. But
Another spot is Parker House. When I first started going there, you used to be able to drink in the driveway, and there was just a couple bushes, and then the ABC came by and said, you can't drink here anymore. And then from the time I was 21 to like maybe 30, it just changed dramatically. Like it got super popular, and the price went up, and it got too crowded, and you couldn't even find a spot to stand anymore. I was like, all right, I'm done with this place.
Yeah. Did you ever venture over to DJs?
Very rarely. But it's like having a bang,
Dude, I mean, that's why I think my energy rides so well with it, because that's my spot. But you're right, and a lot of local people do end up staying away from there. But I think more and more have come to like it, over the last few years. And I always try to convince. I'm like, you ever been to Jay's? And they're like, I stay away from that spot. I'll never go. Like I asked Mike Conn that. He goes, I'll never. I said, listen, you come with me one time, and you'll never want to go anywhere else. I promise you, the energy will be unmatched, But it is a lot there, and it's a different vibe, So that's interesting about the whole Parker House thing. Was it more of a local vibe?
Yeah, it was much more of a local. Kind of had that after beach feel, and then it just turned into a full on like madhouse club with line wrapped around the block.
Yeah, they crush it. Good for them. I know a couple of people that work there. That's not my scene, And they got the pastel color shorts and the polo white tees, and that's not for me. I'm in the trenches. Tank top, heater lit, fist pump, EDM firing. That's how it's done. So, but I know a lot of people that enjoy going there. I have a lot of friends that work there still. I know the Vasilinkos are deep in there. They're good people, so it's cool. Now, has there been any friends of yours that you grew up with that have been able to kind of travel with you and go to these spots that you've gone around, any surfers or any other fellow photographers, videographers that have gone with you along the way?
Yeah. One sitting right here, Corey, we've done some cool little trips together.
Corey Frank, the legend.
But yeah, that's the best part is the surf community, and being a surfer, being a surf photographer, videographer, it builds that camaraderie. And that's the best part about it is, planning these trips and like telling the stories and just having fun and going on the road, and creates a reason to do those things.
Yeah, I think it's cool to see the connections that everybody has just locally, and then going off and seeing what they're doing in other places,
right,
and then being able to do that together.
Yep.
That to me is really cool, and it's cool to hear the stories of all of our friends that we may not know, and that's why I really love this podcast. I was saying it the other day with Cole, like, think about him, like he was on American Idol. Like that's such a cool story, and it's somebody that we know, that we're all friends with. He grew up in the surf culture. He was out in Hawaii when we were out there. He went to school out there. So just stories like that to me are super interesting, and I think a lot of people from around here may not know what everybody has done or how they grew up, or the stories that were going on, while they were doing what we're doing now. Right. And I think it's cool to kind of show everybody that. So
everyone's got a story, everyone's got a perspective, which is cool.
Yeah, and I think around here it's cool to just gain that perspective from everybody which you may not even had a clue of what they've done. Yeah. So, so what's going on with you now? Like you're posted in Manasquan. Are you planning any trips soon? You have any shoots coming up?
Yeah, so I got back in my house. I've been focused on getting my house set up to rent it out so then I can afford to travel again. Get back to the grind. I'm doing I do a lot of fashion, lifestyle fashion up in the city. I work with a brand called Faraday a lot. We do some trips for catalogs. We, do stuff up in New York City. And then the surf world is probably like my second biggest client, that world, where I want to get back into it. I am trying to plan out a documentary with a couple guys right now about New Jersey. It's still very preliminary. What else am I doing? Outside of surfing and photography, I think I mentioned I used to work for IBM. So in high school, I used to work for a local plumbing supply company called Dixon Supply in Brielle.
Great spot. And, had a great ledge. I used to skate.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So I started the web department there, and I used to be big into computers, and I went to school for business information systems. I built websites, databases, everything. Worked for IBM for 7 years. And the coolest thing about that job is, before working from home was cool, back in 2005, I was working from home. I was traveling the world, doing technology-based stuff, databases, building web apps for them. And I did the surf photography on the side. And I'm realizing now after doing photography full time for 10 years that I miss some of the technology aspect, and I'm super passionate about sustainability. So I'm thinking about going back into tech, something around sustainability, and, you know, trying to focus on that while still doing some of the surf photography and fashion photography on the side. So that's my future push. Yeah, right now I'm just kind of marinating in locally and trying to figure things out at post grifter saga.
It really is a crazy story. Now, are you connected with still with some of the people that you worked with at IBM, and, you know, still know people in that space? Are those the people you're reaching out to kind of go forward with what you're talking about in the sustainability?
I'm not actually. I lost touch with all of those people, and most of them I've actually never met in person. And even though working with them for 6 years, it was just phone calls. Yeah. So I met my boss for the first time at the very end. They sent me to India to manage a team that I built. And so they sent me over there to train them, and my boss showed up. He was living in Texas at the time, I think. And that was the first time I ever met him. And then we both left IBM shortly after that. There's a lot of great people that work there. Yeah, I don't stay in touch with any of them, but I have met a lot of great new people in my surf travels. I've recently met a girl that's Iranian that works for Google. She moved to Hawaii from San Francisco. You know, now that everyone can embrace this work from home lifestyle. So I'm meeting a lot of cool people just, you know, that are coming out of the woodwork and going to places like Hawaii. They're moving down to the shore. And I think what we're going to see, you know, this is going deep and futuristic, but we're going to see a much different global society built from this amazing opportunity we have to work from anywhere. And I want to take advantage of that and see what we can do with it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that the pandemic really showed is that a lot of people can be, you know, they can be very productive at home, working from home. And now, like you just said, you know, people are more comfortable with the work from home culture. And I think it's what you just made a good point of, is that it's creating a lot more opportunities. Yeah. Like everybody's all around, and I think people are even traveling to go, you know, work places where they normally wouldn't be able to because they get to work from home. Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but for those who want it, they can get it. You know?
Yeah. I mean, you could stay home and just wake up in your bed, log on to the computer, you're good to go, start doing your work, you know, and then you could do that from anywhere in the world if that's something you want to do.
And when I was at IBM, I never told the executives where I was, but I was sometimes in a car on a cliff in Australia on these crazy phone calls that you would never expect the person on the other end to be on a cliff in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what are some of the other places you've been aside from, because I know Hawaii, California, and some of the other spots? You just mentioned India, Australia. Any other places you've been that you liked?
Oh man, that's the favorite thing that drives me is just traveling. Like, that's what I love so much. And that's what I did a lot of before, while I had that job. And even still with surf photography, that's why I went after photography full time, is just to keep traveling and embracing those first time experiences. But yeah, South America a bunch of times, Iceland, Europe a bunch of times, South Africa, Egypt, Canary Islands, Chile, Tahiti, New Zealand, Australia, Indonesia, India, you know, Canada for surfing, both coasts, snowboarding up there too, Alaska a couple times, Japan. I'm going back to Japan with Alejandro in February.
Oh, you're going out on the trip?
Yep,
oh, that's awesome.
Figured out I could make it.
Any of those spots your favorite, or there's something in each of them?
That's a common question. I'd say there's no favorite. There's places that I've had a great time, and I think it's not always where you are. It's who you're with, and so going back to Japan, the first time I went there, I was only in Tokyo and I was by myself on the way to Indonesia. So this time to Japan could be a whole different experience, traveling with 3 other guys and having a good time snowboarding. So
yeah, it's you, Alejandro, RT, and Harrison's going? Do you know Kyle Harrison?
I don't think I know Kyle.
I think he's going.
Okay.
And Ryan, RT.
Okay, yeah. I think
because he just tagged them in a picture I saw and said, you know, a couple weeks, couple months, whenever you guys are going. And I didn't know. Kyle Harrison's also somebody we grew up with, one of our good friends. So he's out in Cali now. That's where he lives. San Fran, I think, and or San Diego. No, San Fran. And that's cool. So what else? You mentioned the snowboarding ski. Like, what else do you do aside from like surfing and photography and all that you enjoy?
Love snowboarding, love swimming, love technology. Now I'm getting into learning how to like do carpentry and home renovations. It's my new hobby. I call it tinkering. Yeah. I looked up the definition the other day. It's like trying to do something but not actually getting it done.
Are you looking to get, more after this one's kind of settled now? I didn't know you had that whole situation. Are you going to try to buy a few more houses, do more with real estate?
Long term, yeah, I'd look into it. There's a lot of considerations around how much time it takes to manage real estate now that I've been through the experience. But I think it's a great thing to get involved with. Yeah. And I would like to see more.
Yeah, because you were talking also when we were out in Hawaii, talking about because you were out there so often, maybe looking into getting a spot kind of up on the North Shore.
Yeah, it's very unaffordable now, but we do have a year lease on a place. I still have a place there right next to Pipeline. It's an amazing spot. Would love to buy it someday if I had the right partners on it, but for now it's just it's a rental that we're managing, and so far so good. Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of people that are still going out there. I mean, the whole travel thing, it's cool to hear that you were doing the whole travel thing. It's interesting because I really never thought about this prior to the whole work from home thing being big and kind of mainstream. You were doing that before the whole pandemic and all that was even a thing. Like it was.
Yeah, back when the internet was still dial up too.
Yeah,
so
and
there was times when I got to Indonesia that I had to go because I had to get on a call the next day. So I'd land. I have to go sit at the cell phone store in a line. This is back when people had to wait in line to go get the little dongles, like the 3G dongles. Then I had to plug it into my computer, and then I could somehow from the middle of nowhere have the slightest connection if in case someone messaged me or sent me an email that I had to attend to.
It's unreal. I mean, that was just way before anything, and I didn't even click in my mind that could have even been a possibility. But I mean, you're right. You're right. You had to go wait in line for the dial up for the connection.
So all the guys I started calling me Inspector Gadget. All these dongles and GPS. And
Do you have a favorite place to go and shoot surfing? Is there anywhere in particular that you really enjoy being out in the water, the waves, the way they hit, the way they go? Is there anywhere in particular that is your favorite spot?
Yeah, I'd say I got a couple favorites. And one of the coolest things that drew me into surf photography was the shots that I saw of Western Australia. And there's parts of Western Australia I've still never been to, especially up in the desert, but it was more about the ambiance of how well they protect their coastlines there. They don't build on the coast. There's rolling hills and vineyards, and that it's a really special spot out there, and still a frontier for me. But some of the coolest waves I've shot are that, obviously Pipeline, but that's everyone's shot Pipeline. Is probably the Canary Islands. It was a couple of cool trips I did out there. Got a bunch of big slabs out there. Where else? And it all kind of blends together. It's more like the way I think of waves is the memorable sessions, like the Mavericks thing. As far as the beauty of the waves, it's always been like Pipe's just such a photogenic wave at the right time of day and the right swell.
What was it like? This is something I was wondering as well. Now a couple pro surfers, probably more than a couple, probably a bunch. What was it like when you first met somebody who was a professional, well-known surfer? That maybe either you just met him or maybe the first time somebody came to you and was like, hey, I want to use your photo for this. Do you remember what that was like the first time that ever happened?
That was probably back in the bodyboarding days because I used to be a big bodyboarder. I watched all the videos. I knew a lot of the guys. And when we started working with some of the guys that were on the tour, it was like, oh, wow, I'm hanging out with Mike Stewart, legendary waterman. And I grew up seeing him on ESPN, on the bodyboard contests. And then, being in Hawaii, I would just send him over Instagram using a social media thing. I'd just DM a photo and he's like, oh, thanks so much. And he'd post it. And it's really cool. But the first time that happened, I can't really remember the first time it happened, but maybe the first magazine or Surfline post that they posted was pretty cool. I'm trying to think of the first surfer that was well known.
Because it's interesting to me when I was out there, I'm watching all these pro surfers just walk by me. I'm not like a starstruck person where I see somebody I know or that. And again, I'm not really that entangled in the surf culture, but I think it would be pretty cool. When I was out there, actually, this is a cool story. I met Eric Costin. And so you're going to laugh at this because we were surfing Pipe or not surfing Pipe. Sorry. We were skating Pipe, the skate park there.
Okay.
And I was teaching Fabiana how to skateboard. She was really into it. She wanted to learn. So I'm sitting in the middle of this legendary skate park with a bunch of legends. A lot of pros were on the island at that time because they go out there for the winter, I guess. And I'm sitting there holding her hands, dragging her through the middle, and I'm just looking around. And of course, I grew up in skate culture, and I'm like, we need to get the hell out of the middle of this park and let people just do their lines, And sure enough, Eric Costin just swoops by on a board, and I'm I'm like, Fabiana, you know who that is? Obviously, she has no fucking clue. She's like, no. I'm like, that's Eric Costin. Now, for me, I grew up like skating, and like he was somebody that I watched all the time. You know, I was watching Daewon Song, Rodney Mullen. Nigel Houston was young when I was young, and I was watching him come up in the game. Yeah. Eric Costin. And so P-Rod, Paul Rodriguez, like these names. And so seeing him, like he's a legend of skateboarding. Mm-hmm. And he goes by, and I'm like, yo, if you need us to move, just let us know. And he was so cool about it. He was just like, nah, you guys are good. I'll skate around you, no problem. Yeah. So then we do a couple more minutes, and she's like, okay, I'm done. You know how she is. And so I took my board, and I went in there, and I started going, and ended up just next to him, and we started talking about, you know, the hub at the top, like the bench that was up there, how it was kind of sketchy. And I'm just talking to Eric Costin, like while we're skating. I'm like, this is kind of surreal. Like it's so cool to be skating with and talking to about skating, what we're skating with a legend. Like, to me, he's a legend of skateboarding. And so that to me was like one of the most all-time days for me, because I got to meet him, talk to him, and skate with him. Yeah. It's like, and it was just a really cool experience. So that's why I was wondering, like, you grew up in the surf culture. So then, you know, now you know so many of them, but that first time you really get to meet somebody like that, you know, and be in that, you know, vicinity, it's got to be a cool feeling. You know? Oh yeah, I mean, being around people that you look up to and respect, you know, for the first time, it's, you know, it is this crazy feeling, and you're kind of like, oh wow, like I don't even know if can I talk to that person, and then, you know, but being in Hawaii, you know, that's why I kept going back to Hawaii, is the energy. Like everyone comes there, everyone wants to live there, and like, you know, Costin just moved there, and when you're around that level of talent and all the time, it starts to turn into like where you realize over time that these people are normal. They're just like you, and they have to pull their pants down to take a bath, to go to the bathroom just like you do. And so true.
And you know, it just normalizes everyone, and it's cool because then they're more approachable, and then you end up learning a lot more, because now you're like, hey, I can ask him a question, and like, oh wow, he's willing to teach me something. And then if you're really interested in something, you might end up being just as good as that person, because they were willing to, you know, communicate back with you. And like, it just builds like that. And that's what I got out of Hawaii is, you know, just being around all these great surfers like John and, you know, Kelly Slater and whoever else. Just by watching them surf, you tend to absorb, not necessarily the motor muscle memory, but you tend to absorb like certain things, like where you should take off and how hard you paddle and which waves look good and what you should avoid. And you become a more confident person in that sport. Yeah, and the energy that exists in Hawaii for a lot of that is, you're right, it's a special place. I think the energy that exists on the island, when you get there and you are able to become a part of it, it's something that you really can't experience unless you're there. Yeah, you know, and it was cool. And so that whole situation it was very cool for me, and being out there. And I feel like a lot of people may go out there and have a similar experience, because there are a lot of people that are, you know, bigger names that you may not have met that are out in Hawaii. You know, a lot of it's such a beautiful place. You know, it's funny you mention that, because like sometimes I would be at Pipe and I look over and you see someone from like an HBO movie, or like the guy from Westworld, you know, I forget it. Oh, he's out there? Like I looked over, he's like right there. I'm like, oh. Yeah, just sitting there right next to you. I just watched that episode. You know? Yeah. So you see that in Hawaii, because it's such like a marketed, you know, destination. Everyone wants to go look at things like Pipeline, and so you look over and you see a famous person that's in disguise. You know, they're on vacation and they don't really want to be seen, and it's cool because like normally when you see them, they're on the red carpet, but now they're just like right there under that tree. Yeah, sitting right next to you on the beach, which is really cool. Is the North Shore? It's cool. The difference between the North Shore and then being in town, you know, it was something that I learned that first time around being in Hawaii. Do you have a particular favorite part of Oahu? Like, is the North Shore kind of resonate with you the most because you're there shooting a lot? I feel the most like I'm in Hawaii on the east side, because it has that like the real Polynesian feel to it. The raw, big green mountains, lush, kind of still vibey and farmy and in a way. Yeah, the east side's beautiful. Yeah, and the North Shore used to be raw like that. Now it's very suburban, very community oriented, which is good, but it's also turning into like this almost bustling mini city. So it's kind of like it's changed a lot. I did kind of get that feel from some of the local people we talked to while we were there. Yeah, and every year like there's more traffic, more car theft, and it's like you know, it's still a special place, but like you can't just go there and fully relax. You have to be like, there's real things going on here, energy wise, you know, dangerous situation wise with the waves, and also, you know, there's always someone trying to steal something, you know. Yeah, dude, those the lifeguards,
dude, they got their work cut out for them when it's, you know, if somebody gets lost out there, like that's where you're out there, dude. Yeah. I mean, those waves are no joke, and they're in there. And I remember while we were out there, even there was somebody who got, you know, caught in the waves right at the shore break, and they were just getting, it's such a heavy pull, and she was just getting dragged almost into the rocks. And one of the surfers, you know, he threw down his, I think the thing I saw on social media was he passed off his beer to someone or whatever, or the caption was like, hold my beer, and you just see this guy charging it. And, you know, because the lifeguards were already trying to help her, and then he's out there and he just grabs her right before she hits the rocks, and a massive wave comes and slams him. Oh, yeah. I mean, they got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, people really underestimate it. And there's just after the pandemic, I was out there for the winter, and this Russian couple came up to me and my friend Daniel, and they're like, hey, can you get a photo of us in the waves? And I was like, sure, like, you know, we can find the right time. And so I met the guy down at Keiki Beach, which you've seen, massive waves. And Keiki's. I was like, it was like, you know, triple overhead. I was like, no, we're not going here, but we can go down to Waimea Bay. And I was like, he spoke broken English, but I was like, are you comfortable in these waves, right? And he's like, yeah, I've been to Bali. Like, I was like, all right, we'll get the photo of you in the wave like you wanted. And, you know, it's kind of like, it's not dark yet, but it's probably like, you know, 4:00 in the afternoon. Like, people are starting to leave the beach, and we go out in the shore break in Waimea. It's, you know, double overhead there, but at least there's a lifeguard there. And we jump in, and sure enough, the current just like rips us out. Oh. And I'm fine because I know where the currents go. I can swim back the right direction. This guy's freaking out, no longer comfortable. I have to rescue him. This guy's like probably 250. I'm trying not to lose my camera.
Of course.
And I have to drag this guy in through the shore break. It's hard enough for me to swim in through the shore break while the lifeguards are like shouting at us, like telling us when to time it. And I thought I was going to puke because I used like every last ounce of my energy to like not only bring the guy in, but not lose my camera and get myself in, and not take a wave directly on the head. And somehow we made it. I just like sat on the beach for like a half hour, like face down. And the guy just like, I didn't even get the shot of the guy, but he went to his car and he was so thankful I saved his life. He like just threw a bunch of cash at me. And he's like,
yeah, I would do the same thing. I mean, it's no joke out there.
And we're Instagram friends now. And he's actually fighting for the Russians. And I see his Instagram stories. He's got like grenade launchers in his hands and stuff. It's crazy.
What?
Speaking Russian.
Damn. Yeah. And that goes back to the old social media thing. You know, you connected with this guy, you saved his life, you know?
It's like maybe I could help end the war in Russia, like, because I saved his life. Like, hey, man, don't do this.
You might get a DM one day where he says, yo, we need you out here, you know? You know? Absolutely. I mean, if we're going to war, you're one of the first people I'm calling, dude. Yeah. We need the real soldiers going out there, dog. So, so the one thing you mentioned here, this is kind of where I want to close it off, is you mentioned real quickly about how, you know, no matter where you are in your travels and stuff, it's really about the people that you're with, you know, and all the traveling you've done, the photography and stuff like that, through, you know, fashion, surf, everything you've done. What is something that you think you've learned that has stuck with you through going to all these places, seeing all these things, and going through all these experiences? Is it that really it does matter who you're with, or is there something else that has stuck with you?
It doesn't matter who you're with as far as the learning experience. I've traveled a lot by myself, most recently in Iceland, and I drove around by myself and took photos, and it was amazing. You still visualize that culture, you still understand everything about it, and you get that perspective. The thing about traveling with friends is like that extra level of camaraderie in the experience that you get, which is, you can't replace that, you know? So I'd say you could have 10 times more fun with your buddies, but you could still have a 10 times better experience traveling by yourself, just gaining that perspective and that story. And that's the most powerful thing about travel that I bring back with me is seeing how everyone else lives and what they're capable of. You know, in Indonesia, a full family on a motor scooter, it's perfectly legal. They survive, they get through. Maybe someone dies every now and then, but it works for them. And it's chaos, but it's like a beautiful chaos.
Yeah.
And then you come back to New Jersey and there's like a law for everything for like, it's like, you know, people survive, they adapt to their environment. And that's the biggest thing you can learn from going out in the world is like, you don't need all of this shit. Like, you don't have to have all these rules to keep everyone in line. Like, there's a balance between everything, you know? There needs to be order, but you got to let people kind of create these natural environments as well, you know? And there's so much you can learn just by just taking a trip, you know, even by yourself. And
yeah, I think the biggest thing I got through and I've never been somebody who like travels a lot, but you know, as of recent, after going to Hawaii, after going to some other places, it's something that, you know, I'd love to do a lot more of. And what it has given me is perspective, like you just said. And I think, you know, it's cool because you have this aura of wisdom about you, which I mentioned right at the beginning of the podcast. Like I could just tell right when I met you, like it was this aura of power and wisdom and like somebody who knew a lot. And I think, you know, you kind of putting it all together right there. You've done all this traveling and everything. And I think you're spot on. I think the perspective you get when you go to these other places and see how other people are living, what they're doing, you know, what their culture is like, that to me has been the most eye-opening and has really helped me grow. And I feel like makes me a lot wiser is seeing that and giving me much more perspective.
Yep.
Because if you're just where you're at, you know, where you've been your whole life, you really don't get to see that, even with the internet and all that. Like it's like I said, when you're at Pipeline and you're watching those waves like in person, it's not the same as seeing it, you know, through a screen. You know, like you really, when you travel and you get those experiences, it's priceless.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, it's you know, it's just like dropping into a big wave. Like a lot of people, especially my sister, is afraid to travel, and I keep trying to push her to like, hey, take that trip. Like you don't have, you know, your kids you have an empty nest, like go for it. And she's still to this day like afraid. And it's like, I would love more people to just take that leap and just take that trip, and what they'll gain from it, they won't regret it.
No, not at all. They will definitely not regret it. Well, damn, this was an unbelievable. I'm fucking fired up right now that we just kind of left off on that foot, dude. Yeah. I'm ready to fucking crush a whole nother bang and rip fucking chest, dog. I'm about to rip the Iron Paradise right after this, dog. But really, thank you for taking the time and doing this podcast. Again, mentioned you were somebody that I wanted to get on here and just you know, show your points of view and give a lot of your perspective, which has been able to take in a lot from all over, from where you've been and what you've done. So looking forward to see what goes on here in the future. And, you know, we're obviously going to be in touch, and we'll definitely be around. We're local. So
yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So, all right, with that, we're out, baby. Let's go. Fucking fired up, dog.